Recording in.
Amity, do you know why it keeps saying that recording is in progress?
That is Scott's translation recorder letting us know it's recording, I think. I don't know why it's doing it.
Oh, is it going to do that throughout the night?
No, I just turned it on and off. Anytime I turn it on or off, it says something. So that
I see. Okay.
Am I
Amity,
being muted?
before we go live, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So Scott and Lindsay, you can go ahead and turn off your videos for the first segment now as well. Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna start the music and then I'm gonna hit enter. So
Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Financial Case for Building an ADU Now and Not Later.
Bienvenidos a todos.
Bienvenido a nuestro seminario de web. This event is being simultaneously translated into Spanish. Este evento está siendo transmitido en vivo en español. To access that feature, you can click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. Para acceder a este servicio, a favor de oprimir el botón abajo de su pantalla y seleccionar el botón para español. We thank Patricia Galindo, who is offering our audience this live Spanish interpretation this evening. Le damos las gracias a Patricia Galindo, quien nos brinda la interpretación al español esta tarde. And I'm going to go ahead and let Patricia take the interpretation from here. All right, we invite the audience to submit questions using the Q&A function available at the bottom.
Invitamos a las gentes que quieran hacer preguntas que pongan en su accesorio que quieren hacer una pregunta.
And so that you know, this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be made available on demand on our website by next week.
Para que sepan que este video se está grabando para que puedan accederlo la próxima semana.
I'm going to be joined this evening by some really wonderful folks who I'm going to be introducing to you later this evening.
Vamos a estar siendo acompañados por varias personas de diferentes organizaciones que voy a poder introducir en un momento. También queremos darle gracias a la persona que nos está ayudando a poder acceder a este sistema por medio de el web. También hay información que ustedes puedan copiar para poder recopilar información que ustedes necesiten en el futuro para referente a esto. Vamos a hablar acerca de los diferentes módulos que hay, ya sea prefabricados, modulares prefabricados y también de madera. Si usted no está familiarizado con nuestra organización, somos una organización no lucrativa que nos puede encontrar en la página web bajo Napa Sonoma ADU Centro.
Our organization also provides high-level technical assistance and problem
Nuestra organización también le da asistencia de alto nivel para poder ayudarle con el proceso y con preguntas que usted tenga. La jurisdicción cubre el condado de Napa y Sonoma para que nosotros le podamos dar apoyo con lo que usted necesite. También hay muchos detalles en lo que usted necesite que puede encontrar en la página web para cualquier asistencia o ayuda que usted necesite.
And a lot of other things specific to your specific ADU goals and projects. So, making the decision to take action steps on building an ADU is a really big decision. We know that. And it's one of
Hacer una decisión para empezar la construcción de las ADUs que vienen siendo viviendas de bajo costo es una decisión muy grande. Si usted es miembro de ese club de soñadores, usted no está solo. El centro de ADU está aquí para ayudarle con eso.
We're going to go ahead and talk through 8 reasons why we recommend that you get going on your ADU build or your junior ADU build today.
Vamos a entrar a las 8 razones por qué hay una oportunidad de poder construir.
Johnson works as the ADU expert for our nonprofit, the Napa Sonoma ADU Center, and he's also the founder of Pocket Housing LLC, which is a consulting firm that helps homeowners through the process of starting their ADU project from conception through permitting. Lindsay Moon is both a licensed broker and builder, and she brings...
Scott Johnson es una de las personas que trabaja en planificación urbana y economía, que fue a la Universidad de Sonoma y trabajó como analista de urbanización ambiental en proyectos grandes por todo California. Gracias a Lindsay y también a Scott. Lindsay es una persona licenciada en construcción y es una agente que también con ella tiene bastante conocimiento en la compañía Searchlighting. Y ella desempeña el rol de agente de vivienda comercial y residencial y prefabricación.
Then the sooner it's completed and that rental income is coming in, the better. You'll earn more back on your investment. And if a family member like your mother-in-law is moving in, then she'll start saving that.
Una de las razones por las cuales este proyecto es algo muy bueno, que sería bueno para que participen, es porque es un recurso que la persona que tiene casa puede entrar a poder recuperar dinero o hacer un poquito más de dinero y al mismo tiempo ayudarle a personas que necesitan vivienda. Ahora, el dinero que usted puede hacer es bastante rápido, no inmediato, pero llega pronto. Los intereses ahorita están bien bajos.
Interest rates are super low right now, and ADUs are no longer unheard of at financial institutions. Check out our on-demand webinar on how to finance your ADU.
Si usted tiene preguntas acerca de esta institución, por favor, búsquenos en el web para más información.
An online search for an amortization calculator will help you calculate rough costs. However, your individual scenario.
Hay un módulo que le puede ayudar a usted a calcular los gastos sobre este proyecto. Le puede ayudar a darse una idea de algo que usted sabe que puede construir dependiendo de sus ingresos. También le da opciones. Ahorita es un buen tiempo para poder tomar este programa como una opción para que se pueda ayudar a la construcción.
And we move on to reason number 3, and I see there are 2 questions in the Q&A that are actually touching on this subject. Material prices soared in 2020 and 2021. I've been talking with lots of homeowners, and some have been reluctant to start their projects when the prices for materials have been so high. Lumber and other materials got a lot of press recently as their prices went way up this spring. But since May, a lot of those material prices have started to return to something closer to normal. The trend of that decline in price is flattening out, and honestly, price volatility is likely to continue for the next couple of years while production.
Los precios han subido recientemente después de los incendios y parece que ha sido una situación en la cual ha sido un poco difícil el poder alcanzar la meta de construir, pero como que ya se están nivelando un poco más. Ahorita van a empezar, el condado va a empezar a pedir más requisitos para personas que ocupan o viven o hacen viviendas.
So while prices are high right now, historically, there's no guarantee that they won't be as high or higher.
Ahorita el alquiler o las rentas están históricamente altos, pero eso no quiere decir que no van a bajar.
Right now, per the ADU state law that went into effect in January 2020, ADUs that received building permits between January 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020.
Entró una ley que cuando usted recibe permisos entre del 1 de enero de 2020 al 31 de diciembre de 2024, las personas que son dueños son exentos de esas reglas, a menos que sean unidades un poco más nuevas.
So for example, it's 5 to 10 years from now, maybe you need to move because you've gotten a much better job out of the area. If you don't have owner occupancy, you can easily move and keep the house here and rent both the house and the ADU out.
Por ejemplo, si de aquí a 10 años usted decide ya no vivir aquí, usted puede seguir siendo dueño de esa propiedad. El Congreso también ha pasado a los taxes escolares. El Congreso pasó esta extensión, hizo esta extensión hasta el 20 de diciembre que provee el 26% de crédito para sistemas solares instalados hasta el 2022 y después baja al 22% al 2023 y se vence el 1 de enero del 2024 a menos que el Congreso los llegue a renovar otra vez. Hay más información en energy.gov, donde usted puede encontrar más información para créditos de taxes. También los planes de construcción cambian. Los próximos van a tomar efecto el 1 de enero del 2023.
January 1st, 2023. And some of these updates are likely to include a lot more stringent energy budget for heating and cooling.
Estos cambios posiblemente tengan que ver y van a ser afectados por más restricciones. Como decir, el uso de refrigeración de gas a gas, cosas así. Van a haber varios cambios.
So you can find out more information about the details of what's.
Va a haber una charla donde usted puede preguntar o pedir más información acerca de estos cambios que van a venir. La razón número 7 es porque los gastos y costos no van a bajar. La razón es porque hay mucha más gente que necesita vivienda en el caso de la labor de lo que hay disponible. En realidad, como una agente de construcción, los precios de construcción no van a bajar. Hay personas que no quieren hacer este tipo de trabajo en construcción porque hay otros trabajos donde la persona puede trabajar por un pago más alto.
And then reason number 8 is that
La razón número 8,
approved permits expire. So
los permisos de aprobación se vencen.
but your project has stalled out. Either you haven't started it yet, or you started the construction but stalled out due to COVID or other issues. It's
Si
time to
usted empezó el permiso y por alguna razón, por COVID o por cualquier otra razón, usted no pudo seguir con el proyecto, tenga en mente que los permisos se vencen. O si por casualidad el trabajo lo empezó, pero después de 6 meses lo paró.
You can also file for an extension.
Usted puede pedir una extensión si por alguna razón paró su trabajo, el trabajo de construcción. Y todas las reglas y todo lo que se hace está conectado a esa aplicación y esos permisos que usted pide. Es importante que usted reconozca las reglas de su jurisdicción o condado para que usted pueda pedir una extensión.
Thank you both so much for that helpful.
Gracias a los dos para toda esa información que nos dio. Apreciamos. Hay muchas personas que se han comunicado con nosotros que quieren empezar a un proyecto como este.
Especially given how many different decisions have to be made just to get started on an ADU project and the natural mental block that can come with making a
Pero eso es
significant.
algo un poco difícil para las personas que quieren comenzar un proyecto de eso, porque hay muchos factores que hay que incluir, ¿verdad?
Build an ADU, and we're also not a government
Nosotros
agency.
no somos una compañía o una agencia no lucrativa que recibe dinero. No le pedimos pago. Nosotros estamos aquí para ayudarle, a apoyarlo en su viaje, se puede decir, hacia este proyecto.
And specifically, how soon you start to see a return on your investment. To that end, we get a lot of questions from homeowners who want to know, should they build their ADU as a traditional stick build construction, or should they build prefab, modular, manufactured? The answer,
Las personas tienen muchas preguntas acerca de qué tipo de vivienda construir, ya sea prefabricado, modular o de madera. Porque también hay que pensar en el hecho de que cuál va a ser su retorno en el futuro con esta inversión que se está haciendo.
Prefab, manufactured, and modular builders who can work with you if you're interested.
Hay personas compañías que le pueden ayudar a contestar sus preguntas y apoyarlos si usted está interesado en empezar un proyecto como este.
So be brief because there's such a broad spectrum of products and homes that fall under the prefab, modular, manufactured label. One decision that can have a really big impact on your return on investment is which kind of product you go for.
Hay algo que tener en mente, que hay muchas diferentes opciones para construcción y usted tiene que pensar en qué es lo que le conviene más a usted.
Site access can have a lot of determining factors on what type of, if you decide to go.
El acceso a un lugar es uno de los factores que hay que pensar. Una casa, por ejemplo, que ya está construida completamente, hay que pensar a ver si hay suficiente espacio. Hay muchas opciones. Y también tiene que pensar en el precio dependiendo de la compañía con quien usted haga el contrato.
who is responsible for getting the permitting for the house itself? Is that on the homeowner yourself?
Hay muchas cosas en las que hay que pensar también. ¿Quién es la persona que le va a ayudar con los permisos?
Trenching the utilities.
Hay muchos detallitos de los que hay que pensar antes de empezar a hacer algo así.
Whose responsibility is that? Who's going to manage that project? And so it's really on the homeowner to do the research to understand exactly what you're going to
Entonces, con estas preguntas cae en el dueño de casa de buscar la información para ver qué es lo que más le conviene y qué tipo de información es lo que va a necesitar para empezar un proyecto como estos.
The services that you're buying from them and the long-term durability and repairability of the ADU itself. There can be sort of what I think of as a startup problem in some of the modular companies is that they're very new.
Hay compañías que hacen casas modulares, pero hay unas que son bastante nuevas. Y posiblemente no tengan la experiencia con compañías que ya tienen más tiempo o fábricas que construyen estos modulares. Así es que tiene que pensar con qué compañía usted va a hacer el contrato. Es bueno que usted busque a ver qué compañía más le conviene, dependiendo de los precios.
And some opportunities to keep in mind, especially about modular and prefab, is that they are greener and faster and can definitely be less
Oportunidades que hay que tener en mente es de que las casas prefabricadas o modulares son más amigables al medio ambiente.
Building in a factory with artificial intelligence can and will bring in a whole new generation of cool jobs. And if you can build modular and aren't restricted by access issues, it's certainly your best bet.
Si usted puede empezar un proyecto de construcción donde no tiene que incluir a personas que le ayuden con la construcción con un martillo y en el sol, será mucho mejor buscar diferentes opciones. Ahora vamos a pensar y hablar acerca del retorno de su inversión.
See if I can do this quickly and easily. Let's see this. All right. So this is the website, the calculator that we have on our.
Aquí estamos viendo un calculador y vamos a hablar de diferentes escenarios para que usted vea qué tipo de retorno a su inversión puede usar. Cada proyecto del ADU es único. Esto obviamente no le va a dar toda la información que usted necesita, pero le da una idea.
Here you can save and load your settings for if you want to come back to it. You can choose a language.
Se va a ver que puede poner en la pantalla, está viendo que usted puede poner en inglés o en español la información. Por ejemplo, ponga la ciudad donde usted vive. ¿Qué tipo de construcción usted busca? ¿Cuántas recámaras quiere?
And so once you give it enough information,
El tamaño de la vivienda que usted quiere. Cuando usted ya ha puesto toda esa información ahí, al final de esto le va a dar la proyección del costo o de lo que te va a costar esa vivienda y los gastos.
And we're going to choose, it's going to be a 1 bedroom here. And we'll go 2 bedrooms because 800 square feet.
En este módulo usted va a ver que, por ejemplo, si usted quiere construir una casa de 800 pies cuadrados,
potential
gastos.
Now, we don't have the local government fees included yet. That's going to be coming soon. But we do talk about the hard costs and the soft costs of the actual construction project. And then, servicing the debt depending on the financial picture, which is kind of the next piece here. So look at the construction. We have choices in construction as well.
Ahí está viendo que usted tiene la opción de buscar
And they all change
lo que cuesta la construcción.
The fit and finish of an ADU is 30% of the cost of the total project. So this can really have a dramatic outcome on your return on investment, how quickly you're profitable with your ADU project. We also have some information on site conditions, construction difficulties, if it's sloped, if you've got.
También hay información acerca de la condición del terreno, lo fácil o lo difícil que sería construir.
And then, once you've kind of got those laid in,
Cuando usted ya ha puesto esa información que es solamente específicamente para usted, oprima la sección donde habla del refinanciamiento.
So it looks like Cassandra's coming in with $100,000 as a cash investment.
Aquí está un ejemplo de Sandra y su inversión de $100,000
cash out refinance for the remaining 2
y con el refinanciamiento de su
So,
casa.
you can, probably the best bet is to go with like a 30-year, which is going to be amortized. That's going to be the
El refinanciamiento es bueno pensar en un refinanciamiento de 30 años
an interest rate,
con un interés de 3.5.
primary
Todo esto es
residence,
un
you can
ejemplo
definitely get a bit of a
como
lower
su
rate, which
residencia
is
principal.
3.25%. And I think the insurance and the property tax rate, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, are kind of just set at good averages. So, because that's going to be very specific. So we'll just
Creo
leave
que
it
los impuestos
And there's
de
also
propiedad y
we're
los
not showing
taxes
the property
están
manager, which is super important
firmes
because there's
ahorita.
a cost associated with that. And if you uncheck the box, you'll see that the costs do change slightly with that, with monthly.
Si usted oprime a cierto botón, usted puede ver los diferentes precios de lo que cuesta el proyecto que usted tiene.
So there are some options there.
Hay varias opciones que usted puede usar.
If you know that, but if you don't know it, then just kind of leave it as is.
Que no sabe o quiere una idea, simplemente
And then
use la opción, las opciones que hay para que le den una idea de cuánto va a costar, cuál es una calculación.
Do you want to click that box? And so that will kind of change your projections as well. What rent would you like to use in the calculation?
La calculación que usted ponga le va a dar una idea de cuánto usted va a cobrar o quiere cobrar en renta.
Right. And there are monthly expenses and annual rent increase. Again, typically we have rents in Napa and
Usted puede poner ahí los gastos mensuales.
And your average tenant usually stays about 2 years.
También hay que pensar en la posibilidad de que ese inquilino se quede unos 2 años. Le da una buena idea de cuánto es lo que va a recibir como retorno de su inversión. También puede planear y pensar en qué pasa, algo negativo que llegue a suceder con su inquilino.
And then up at on the other side here, we have a couple of other tabs.
Al otro lado está
Well,
los valores.
to walk us through.
Oh, thank you. Once you get your calculation set, you will be able to see kind of what you're getting back. So in
Cuando
this
usted haga sus calculaciones, usted va a tener una mejor idea de cuál va a ser su retorno de su inversión.
in her pocket within 9 years. And the return on her investment, once she's accounted for the remaining loan, is 3 years. And then her
En esta sección usted va a tener una buena idea de cuánto es lo que va a recibir en los próximos 9 años, el retorno de su inversión. Está una tabla, por ejemplo, de lo que recibiría el incremento de valor de su propiedad en los próximos 10, 20 y 30 años. Y eso incluiría la idea de cuánto va a recibir de renta o de alquiler, ingresos activos, que incluye la renta menos los gastos necesarios, la renta que usted cobre, los gastos mensuales y los impuestos anuales que posiblemente aumenten. Esto le da una buena idea de los gastos y los reembolsos que usted pueda recibir con hacer una de estas unidades. En Napa tiene opciones. Ahorita estamos viendo la opción donde qué pasa cuando usted hace una inversión de construcción en Napa. Los precios son un poquito diferentes porque es relacionado a una vivienda en un garaje que ha sido convertido. Los gastos son un poco diferentes a una casa modular. Puede usar el calculador de construcción y usted puede escoger ahí qué tipo de muebles quiere poner. Si quiere un sistema de calefacción eléctrico, también la plomería, refrigeración, todas esas opciones las tiene ahí para que usted escoja qué tipo de herramientas va a poner en su casa.
See in the finances, he's actually going to come in with no money, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yes. It's going to make sense for him to just pull it out of the equity in his home. And he's looking for the lowest monthly payment on that too. So we'll stick with a 30-year.
Esta persona ha decidido, por ejemplo, que va a invertir dinero sacándolo de su casa que ya tiene.
I believe Peter, because he's on a budget, he's decided not to use a property manager. So that's going to save him some costs. And
puesto que esta persona que ha hecho una vivienda, convertido el garaje a vivienda, va a poder controlar y administrar esta vivienda él o ella, y no va a tener los gastos de una persona, de un gerente que le ayude con este proyecto.
So he's getting his return just, within 2 years.
Puesto que esta persona, digamos, sacó dinero de su casa, del costo de su casa, el valor de su casa, su inversión va a aumentar. Puede ver que en 10 años, 20 años y 30 años el valor de su casa va a aumentar.
And future monthly rents, monthly costs, annual tax increase, and the average annual return on investment does not apply because he did not put in a cash investment. So typically a homeowner is going to, if they're going to be doing a refinance, they they rarely will self-fund. You know, if you're going to be pulling that cash out, that they're going to pull out the cash that they need to complete the project.
Regularmente una persona que tiene su propia casa no va a invertir dinero en efectivo, va a sacar dinero de lo que ya tiene el valor de la casa.
Outcomes for the homeowners. And you know, all of these, we're constantly updating these this model as we get more information. So we're keeping it up to date. So you can come and try and say, okay, we want to do, you know, a new ADU, a detached ADU of 600 square feet. You know, we think we can get a loan for, you know, 3.25 or you can put the numbers in and really get a long-term sense of what the financial return on investment, what the impact's likely to be, and get a sort of a ballpark sense of what construction costs are likely to be.
Dependiendo del tamaño de la vivienda que usted quiera hacer, tiene mucho que ver con los gastos que va a tener y los intereses y las inversiones.
All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to finance this all. We will be putting in a Casita Coalition financing primer that I was able to help
Pero
author.
vamos a hablar acerca del refinanciamiento de su unidad de
I'd
vivienda.
like to give a recap of just the different financing options out there.
Hay varias opciones de refinanciamiento.
There we go. Great. All right. So yeah, if you can self-fund your ADU project,
Usted puede hacerlo por su cuenta,
use your existing assets.
puede
Again, you know, money is
usar sus
expensive right
recursos
now, rates are low, so it is a
que
good time if you
existen.
can to use your home equity. So within that category, you can do a cash out refinance, meaning you may have a certain amount of equity in your home and you're able to pull that out. You get it in one lump sum. You can also potentially do kind of a second or a HELOC, which is like a line of credit.
También puede
There are some other
usar
options
lo
out
que
there.
ya
There
tiene
are
acumulado
virtual
en
loans
su
over
hipoteca.
602. It's not great for everybody, but it can work for some, and it's best if you talk to a financial advisor about your personal situation on that.
Es bueno hablar con una persona que se encarga de ver recursos financieros de las individuales para que le dé una idea de qué es lo que tiene más a usted.
There are also renovation loans and construction loans.
También hay préstamos de renovación para renovación y construcción. Hay varias opciones. Personas o compañías que están dispuestas a hacer préstamos.
So that's a nice option because the construction loan and reno loan will sometimes almost always base your valuation on the future or as completed value of the home. So sometimes you're able to draw a lot more from the home. And there are some experimental products out there as well.
Tener la opción de construir una casita en su propiedad incrementa el valor de su vivienda. Y hay compañías que están dispuestas a trabajar con ustedes en este proyecto.
And that, you know, again, depends on your comfort level. And so if you're just kind of confused about where you go from here, definitely always reach out to a mortgage broker.
Está confundida acerca de las diferentes opciones. Comuníquese con una persona que trata de raíces, que trata con hipotecas, para que le dé más información y le pueda ayudar con la hipoteca.
If you're on the low home equity side, you can look at the construction loans, renovation loans, and
diferentes tipos de préstamos, préstamos de construcción, préstamos de remodelación. Pero al final la inversión va a ser buena para este tipo de proyecto que se llama el ADU. Gracias a Nancy. Gracias por ayudarnos a ver, ayudarnos
And
con
for
esto,
those
con las
of you who
calculaciones.
want to
Claro.
start thinking through your budget as well as your financing, please go to our website. Amity dropped a link in the chat to that calculator tool. Go ahead and try out.
Hay un enlace
on your own
donde usted
independent
puede
budget.
buscar más información
And then
para
again, as
sacar
Sarah
sus
both
propias
mentioned, it's
calculaciones y
just a way to get a rough estimate for your project.
para que le
It's
dé
not the
un
final
estimado de su
all answer to what your budget is going to be. If you're interested in getting more individualized information, definitely reach out to one of the finance professionals that we have on our vendor registry, which also has been dropped into the link and is available on our website. Lindsay's one of those folks on there. And then also, if you want to talk through cost drivers for your individual ADU project,
tiene
you can send
preguntas acerca de los
feasibility consultations
gastos,
through
acerca
our
del
website.
financiamiento,
Scott is our ADU
cómo
expert who meets with
sacar
you one-on-one,
permisos.
talks through
Comuníquese
individual site-specific questions, cost drivers for your project,
con
models for
NAPA
your ADU, and then sends you a
ADU.
customized ADU feasibility report, which walks you through next steps on
Y
your
ellos le
project,
van a ayudar
professional team you should hire for your
paso por
specific
paso a dar la
project,
información que
your
usted.
local ADU rules, and a lot more. All right. I really wanted to also let you all know that we have more ADU webinars coming up before we dive into our live Q&A portion. So if you haven't
Van a
already
haber
taken
más
time to start
pláticas,
questions into the chat, we're going to move
seminario
very shortly into
en el
the live
futuro
Q&A with our panelists.
y tenga
But
pendiente
if you want to join us for more
para que
webinars,
pueda
go ahead and check out that link that is there on the slide for our upcoming ADU webinar events calendar. We're going to be presenting on some new ADU financing opportunities later this month. In November, we're going to be joined by
En
planners.
noviembre van a haber otros seminarios por web donde le van a dar más información y van a platicar más acerca de estos proyectos.
Really handy checklist to guide you through that process, regardless of what jurisdiction you're in across Napa and Sonoma counties. And then
Se va a hablar de una guía de los diferentes proyectos.
earlier, all you need to know about prefab, modular, and manufactured ADUs. And we're going to be bringing on some really excellent builders who do that prefab, modular, and manufactured work for you to meet and speak directly with
En
them.
próximos seminarios van a traer personas que son expertos en este tipo de cosas.
If you were swept away or overwhelmed by all those ADU financing options that Lindsay really helpfully walked us through, we have a deep dive in our recorded How to Finance Your ADU webinar that Lindsay was also
Si
in.
usted quedó sorprendido o hasta cierto punto un poco confundido, nosotros le podemos ayudar a cualquier pregunta que usted tenga. Comuníquese con nosotros.
So Scott, go ahead and pull up your video and we can walk through some of the questions that folks have for us this evening.
Ahora vamos a preguntas y respuestas.
Go ahead and start with, let's see here. I am going to go ahead and start with a question on property taxes for Scott.
Okay.
And if you can speak to the insurance segment of the question, that's great too. But the question is, does property tax and home insurance increase after building an ADU? And I'm also just going to add that we have a very detailed blog post on this subject that I'm also dropping in the chat for all of you. But with that, I'll hand it over to you, Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, with property taxes, there is an increase, but it's a very specific increase. The entire property doesn't get reassessed. It's just the value of the
La
construction.
pregunta para Scott Johnson es si el valor de su propiedad y los impuestos aumentan después que usted hace una unidad de estas.
Near 50 years now. If you build an ADU, they're only going to assess it based on the value of the.
En el caso de las ADUs o las casitas de modulares, sí aumenta, pero no mucho. Se basan en el valor de ese proyecto.
Thanks so much, Scott. Lindsay, do you have anything that you would want to add on that point? I think that Scott covered everything that we can cover this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. That was good.
Okay, great. And then we have a question here. Even though we are building the ADU to rent out, are we getting the mortgage as owner occupied? Lindsay, do you want to clarify for that question?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. If it's your residence, then yes, you're getting a mortgage. If you're doing a cash out refinance, you're wrapping in your existing mortgage with new equity and getting a new rate and a new mortgage at that higher loan amount. And
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then Lindsay, I'm looking at Kenneth's question here and wondering if you can help us answer it. Is home or property value less than construction cost investment due to lack of appraisers, banks data, or familiarity with ADU value added? The answer is probably yes. But do you want to elaborate on that on the answer to that question, Lindsay?
Sorry, absolutely. Yes. It really is going to be dependent on where you're building and exactly what you're building in terms of that. That's the calculator is a bit of a rough calculator in that term. If you're building in a higher affluent area, you probably again going to get your return on investment right off the bat. But it's expensive to build. And, if you're living in, say, Sacramento and your home's worth $300,000 and an ADU costs $250,000, your home's just not going to be worth, $550,000 when you're done. It's going to be a longer term investment for sure. But again, like we covered earlier, there's not only the valuation of your home potentially increasing, but then you're also now generating an income stream if you are renting out that property.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. Scott, go ahead if you're going to add.
I was going to tag on much the same thing in that, I've spoken to a number of appraisers and what they told me about the valuations, they just haven't seen enough turnover of modern ADUs, modern legal ADUs in the market to really get a good sense of how much value they add. The numbers that I was hearing from appraisers were somewhere between probably 80 to 120% of construction costs. And I think for the calculator, we chose a very conservative estimate for property values because we didn't want to oversell that aspect of it. We wanted to ensure that this is a really conservative, realistic value. It may be more than this, but the 10 times or 100 times rent or whatever it was something that we could confidently say this is a good valuation to base some decisions off of.
Thanks so much, Scott. Scott or Lindsay, I'm looking at Steve's question, wondering if either of you want to address that question.
Yeah, I'm vaguely familiar with Brookhaven. I haven't done a deep dive. I like what I've seen of what they're doing. And this is actually goes to a conversation I was having with my aunt about 3D printed homes. And that one
And Scott, actually, I'm realizing, do you want to read the question before you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. Sorry. It says,
Usually I read the question, I'm realizing.
I just jumped right in. How about converting modular dual occupancy emergency transitional shelters with high R values like the Quick Haven into permanent ADUs? Wouldn't this be a cost-effective option? And the answer is yes, but because as I understand it, the Quick Haven and other transitional structures, they aren't regulated by the same set of rules as a full legal residence. And they have sort of a carve out that allows them to be used, but not rented in the way that a house can be rented or an apartment can be rented. And that, I think what we bump into there is a matter of building regulations and planning regulations of what's allowed to be a legal allowable unit. And we're seeing a lot, I think, both in the modular world and 3D printed homes. There are a lot of creative ideas that are coming out that haven't really got coded into California's building code yet. So they are experimental, they are hard to approve. They may be in our future, maybe hopefully soon in our future, but as the way that the current regulations sit now, it's difficult for something like the Quick Haven, which I believe is under 70 square feet, which is too small for a room, for a bedroom at this point, from an apartment legal resident standpoint. It's a matter of matching the the house to the regulations you want to use it under. And that's where a lot of the problems, I think, or a lot of the roadblocks currently still exist for solutions like that.
Thanks so much, Scott. And then we have, I love this question, which is, what is the process? Like zooming back out, what is the ADU journey? Where do I begin? When do I talk to someone about getting a loan? When do I talk to an architect? That's a big question, and it's something that we talk about a lot. So Scott, do you want to walk us through that ADU journey from pre-development on?
Yeah, and I would love Lindsay to jump in and particularly about when they should start shopping for a loan, and because I think, you know, the two things that really seem to drive what kind, what size, where an ADU gets built in your property comes down to your budget and the space that you have available to build. And so, you know, I think that the Napa Sonoma ADU Center is a great step zero, as I like to call it, for people who are considering an ADU and don't really know where to begin. That said, having an idea of your budget, of what's possible for you in your situation, is a really good place to start, because whether you go above the garage or detached or whatever, you know, you're going to be limited by your budget. And so in some ways, I think figuring out your budget is kind of the first step. Maybe not applying for a loan, but getting the sense of, you know, what's possible in terms of financing. Lindsay, do you want to jump in on that point?
I completely agree. Yeah. It's going to be, you know, if you're doing a construction loan, you do need to have your set of plans, your pretty much be almost permit ready and build ready to apply for that loan. So you do need to get down that road further. If you're doing like a cash out refinance, you can kind of do it at any point. But you know, once you've pulled that cash out, you're committed to that, and you've pulled it out, you're paying, you know, a higher mortgage amount. So yeah, it really it will depend on what you're looking to do in that regard, for sure.
Yeah, and there can be a little bit of a chicken and egg situation there of how far do you go down the financing path before you know what you want to build. But like the calculator, having kind of a rough, well, we're thinking, you know, 150, or we're thinking 250, we're thinking, you know, somewhere in that ballpark of we think we can, you know, finance that kind. That really will determine, okay, you're not going to do 1,200 square feet with you know, marble stairs and a fountain. You're going to do something, you know, smaller than that. So
For sure. But you
just
also
even
want to see, and you know, it doesn't hurt to talk to a mortgage officer just to kind of see what you can also qualify for too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's critical. So then once you've kind of gotten that, you know, we help homeowners all the time, every day, every week, sort of figure out what's possible. We try and figure out, you know, what their goals are, and we give them a report based on what they've told me, and we know about their property, about their goals, about their budget, and we go through all the different options from junior ADU to, you know, fully detached ADU of what's possible on the property, what's likely, what's the best fit for their budget and goals, and then also talk about next steps, which is typically at that point working on your professional team, which would be finding a designer, and talking with your local jurisdiction. I always encourage that, you know, when you're thinking about this, talk to your city, talk to the county, and say, hey, I want to do an ADU. I'm thinking about, you know, I want to do one in my backyard. What should I do next? Because the cities and counties often have a lot of also very good information that they can provide for you. And really kind of the first step from a professional team perspective is your designer, and then many of the other professionals, structural engineers, civil engineers, geotechnical engineers, they come from that initial relationship with your designer. And then, you know, as you go through that process, you know, you want to find a general contractor and have them involved at least at the tail end of the design process, so that what you get designed can really be built for the price that you're willing to pay. And then you get a permit, and then you go into construction, which is a whole nother sort of project and management process. But the very first part is to, I know I'm going on about this, but is to sort of define your budget, define your scope of what you think you can build and what you want to build to satisfy your needs, and then start trying to marry those two together and work with professionals to get there.
Thanks so much, Scott and Lindsay. And I also just want to say, you know, it is a journey. A lot of ADU projects take 1 to 2 years from start to finish. And a really great way, as I've mentioned a couple times now, is to join us for an ADU consultation. You'll be able to walk through your reasons for wanting to build an ADU with our team, talk through the options on your parcel, and really get that help as you're starting to think about whether this is the right decision for you. So if you feel overwhelmed by the stages of the ADU process, we are here to help you any day. Reach out to us. To that end, I have also dropped into the chat for everyone. I want to remind you all that the Zoom chat has tons of links and resources that we've shared here. And you know what? If you're looking at that chat and you're like, I don't know how to copy and paste that onto my computer, or that's a lot of stuff for me to copy and paste, just shoot me an email, info@napasonoma.edu.org, and I will email you all of the links if that is easier as well. We really want to be here to make this as doable for you as possible, because we know there's a lot of different decisions to be made, especially at the outset. I also dropped a link there to different types of accessory dwelling units. So we had a question earlier that I answered in writing. Can an ADU does an ADU have to be detached from the main house? That's such a great question. And the answer is no, it doesn't. There's a lot of different types of ADUs, whether it's conversion of a garage, conversion of existing space within your primary home, attaching an ADU to the primary residence, or detached. And I dropped a link to little visuals for you on all those different types of ADUs. And that's another thing we talk through with you in the ADU feasibility consultations. So I think we have another question here, but I also wanted to make sure that I noted for the person who asked about home insurance increasing, our ADU calculator tool that you can find easily on our website that Scott and Lindsay walked through earlier actually incorporates insurance costs into it. I don't know if we mentioned that earlier. Sorry if you already did, Scott, but insurance costs are calculated in that tool. Okay, so here's the question. Are structures only built with standard materials and designs financed for ADUs? We're considering doing an alternative structure, either poured concrete or subterranean. Lindsay, do you have any insights into that question?
Lenders are definitely okay with certain prefab and modular ways. They have to, meet all California building codes and be an established way of building. But I don't know what subterranean is, but Scott, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to very similar to the other answer is, if it's something that you can do under the California Building Code to create a residence, then that's kind of that's the ballpark that everybody's looking at, that banks are looking at, that insurers are looking at, is, is this, a known quantity for a legal residence?
Exactly.
And if it is, then you're golden in most cases. And there are, it's a pretty,
Las preguntas tienen que ver con el valor de la vivienda futura que usted quiera hacer, qué tipo de valor va a tener en el futuro, obviamente, pero también cómo le afectaría en el futuro con lo de sus impuestos, qué compañía puede usar para el financiamiento de esa vivienda. Hay muchas preguntas que la gente tiene acerca de estas viviendas, pero si usted tiene preguntas específicas de cómo empezar desde el primer paso a la construcción, puede comunicarse con la organización para que le den información más específica a sus preguntas. En la pantalla usted verá cómo comunicarse con la organización Napa Sonoma ADU, que quiere decir casitas de vivienda.
We also want to make sure that we thank our supporters and partners.
Gracias, darle gracias a todas las organizaciones que nos apoyaron esta noche. Napa Valley Community Foundation, Community Foundation, Condado Sonoma, County,
County of Napa and the City of Calistoga. And we really appreciate all of you for joining us this
Los
evening.
aprecio a
I'm
todos
sure
por
that you have
haber
more questions.
acompañado.
Again, reach out to us
Si tienen
anytime.
más
Sign up
preguntas,
for
por
a free
favor,
ADU
comuníquense
feasibility consultation
directamente
on our website
les podamos
at
contestar esas preguntas y
And finally, we
ayudarlos
have an
a
anonymous
una
survey that's going to
consulta
pop
breve.
up as soon as the webinar ends. And we would love for you to fill that out. Give us feedback on how
Va a haber un
we can
cuestionario al
improve
final
our
de esta
services and
plática.
our webinar.
Por favor, trate de
Wonderful.
llenarlo porque
Thank you
queremos
again to
tener
everyone that joined us for
información
this
acerca de qué les
evening.
pareció
Scott,
este
Julie,
seminario.
Patricia,